Giannis, Kevin Garnett, Kevin Durant, who's had the best career? Camille and I share our thoughts coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode of the show brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. A couple interesting pieces of content came out in the past couple of days since we've been away, Camille, and we start with our friends at CBS Sports, everybody's favorite outlet here. They put together a look at, their rankings for the 25 best players of the 21st century. So before you rush to Google and search, wait, what is the 21st century again? It's 2001 onward.
Yes.
So taking a look at the top 25 players of the last basically 25 years, Giannis is going to be certainly in that group of the top 25, but you got to look back at guys who were still kind of clinging towards the end of their run, or maybe got a bulk of the first decade of the century in. When you look at guys like a Shaquille O'Neal, you think about guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe Bryant, who played into the second decade there as well. Dwayne Wade and those types of players. So a lot of names to pull from here. And CBS Sports has Giannis ranked right now number 7 over the last 25 years of all players to have played in the NBA. And that number 7 is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, Bucks fans are going to take issue with the fact that Nikola Jokic on this list is number 4. So he's coming in there higher than Giannis. But number 7 is ranked in front of players like Kevin Durant, who is 8th on the list, and Kevin Garnett, who is 9th, even Dirk Nowitzki, who's 10th. And before we started recording, we were talking about, ultimately, and I wonder how much this changes in the next however many years that we continue to see Giannis in the league. But as of right now, the names that come up the most when you try to put his career in the proper perspective are really Dirk Nowitzki and Kevin Garnett. When you think about what they've accomplished in statistics, and in the case of Dirk, he did it with one team, which we hope we see with Giannis. KG won the title with the Celtics, but you think about before that and what he did with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and obviously Kevin Garnett's connection to the Bucks with his relationship with Doc Rivers, and praising Giannis early, but having some misses as well when he said that Thon Maker was going to be the next in that group. I was very surprised, and I don't have an issue with it. I think it's accurate, but I was surprised to see him come in front of all 3 of those guys on this list.
I think for me, seeing Giannis on a list like this, period, always puts things in perspective a little bit. Like, man, like we've really gotten the chance.
Remember,
like one of the greatest players to ever play the game of basketball plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, and seeing a list like this with him being named as a top 10 player of the century so far, I always take that moment of just appreciation of like, dang, I remember when we drafted him, like that skinny kid out of Greece, and it was kind of like, is he going to play? And everything that's gone on in the journey since then. So seeing him on that list, period, is just really cool. The Nikola Jokic part, I think, will be a topic of debate for people, but to the point of the legends that he's ahead of. And I think that part of putting together a list like this is always like a check just of where you are in time of like, okay, we're putting Giannis ahead of guys like Dirk Nowitzki and Kevin Garnett, who we watched their full careers. And I do wonder if part of it for Giannis is not only what he's accomplished so far, but he's still in the thick of what he is going to continue to be at this point. Like, we've already seen what the end of Dirk looks like, what the end of KG looks like. We haven't seen what the end of Giannis looks like yet at this point. So I wonder if that helps boost him. But even when you're looking at just like the raw stats of like things, one, I mean, Giannis has the NBA Cup. on his resume now that these other guys don't at this point. But seriously, I mean, he has the 2 finals MVP. We know Dirk got 1, KG got 1. He has the finals MVP. Dirk had 1, KG did not. All NBA teams, Giannis has 9 total all NBA teams at this point, which amazing to think about how his career started and then seeing that number, which is more than Kevin Garnett, who had or same as Kevin Garnett, 9 total selections. Giannis has more first team selections than KG. So it's one of those things where you're looking at it where you're like, I can see how it stacks up. And Giannis is one of those guys who, comes out ahead of legends of the sport, because Giannis himself is now a legend of this sport.
The most, and I suppose before we get into the most interesting player behind Giannis, to me, I don't want this to become a let's trash Nikola Jokic and lift Giannis. Like, to do so, let's trash Nikola Jokic, because we can appreciate and admire the greatness of both players. And I get Nikola Jokic being in front of Giannis on this list. They both won the same number of championships. Nikola Jokic won 3 MVPs in 4 seasons, which is rarefied air. So it makes sense there. Yeah, we can get into the two-way player argument. It's a valid one, but look, in terms of the rest of the accomplishments, they're basically neck and neck. Nikola Jokic has 1 more MVP, so I get it. But what stood out the most to me was Giannis checking in front of Kevin Durant on this list, directly in front of him, because I think for a while, we talk about KD being arguably the greatest scoring forward of all time. I think Larry Bird would have something to say about that, but just the ease in which he's done it and his size and the ability that we've seen from Kevin Durant to stretch the floor for a 7-footer is what makes him truly unique. And again, arguably the greatest scoring forward of all time. There's no disputing that greatness, all the accomplishments that he's had. He's won more championships than Giannis and appeared in more finals than Giannis. But, ever since the post-Oklahoma City days, I wouldn't say the side eye started there. It was really once he left the Warriors where I think maybe at times people could kind of understand the rationale and the logic behind it of like, well, that's Steph Curry's team. And what did you expect? The same thing we've talked about with Giannis and the cautionary tale of watching Damian Lillard come to and exit Milwaukee. But it's all the decisions since then where he's taken on this basically basketball mercenary figure that he's become. And I do think in the grand scheme of things, even though this is a ring culture, that it has fully become that. And you look at it and say, well, look at the titles that KD won playing next to Steph Curry. He's got more than Giannis as of this moment. He's been better, and he's a better shooter too. I do think once we remove ourselves from this, and who knows how much this changes over the next half decade, a decade, with the way the league is structured now, I think they're trying to eliminate super teams, and really they want guys to stay with their teams for an extended period. That's going to boost the resume of players like Giannis, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, and that type of player in the long haul, the further removed we're from it.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but I think that's a good point and something to keep an eye on going forward to see how history continues to look at those guys who did stay with the one team. And I think for KD, one part about him being on this list at this point is when he had his Achilles injury, I remember thinking like, man, we just saw one of the greatest scorers of all time go down. He's not going to be the same, so on and so forth. And to be able to see KD now in 2025, years after this Achilles injury, putting up buckets, still being an efficient nightmare on the floor for opposing, teams, and I guess opposing Locked On hosts, because him and Dimes are still kind of feuding at this point, which that's neither here nor there at the moment. But on the court, like what KD can do at his size, it's unbelievable with the level of efficiency that he shoots with too. So I do think the other part of it is the journeyman aspect of it, going from the Thunder to the Warriors to the Nets to the Suns and now the Rockets. But KD being top 10 for sure. It's just, again, when you put it in the perspective of like, they're ranking Giannis above a KD, somebody whose resume is so long, someone who Giannis himself has said I looked up to. It goes to show again just how special what Giannis has done here in Milwaukee, what he continues to do has been, because one of the greatest players of all time. Like, they're ranking him above one of the greatest scorers, period. Forward label or not, just bucket getters. KD is one of them ones.
7 players total on this list of 25 have only played for one team. 6 in the top 10. So once you get past 10, it just becomes a list of those guys that have bounced around from a couple of different teams. Damian Lillard is on that list at number 22. Jason Tatum is the 7th, the one that's outside of the top 10. They have him ranked 23rd. Certainly an interesting one. I think 23 and 24 are the most interesting ones on this list. You have Jason Tatum at 23. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 24, he's the reigning MVP.
Yeah.
I think we still need to see a little bit more of a track record before we can insert him as one of the 25 best players of the last 25 years. But that's one of the big themes of this to me is those players near the top, in the top 10 especially, for a league that's seen as much turnover and player movement as it has, 60% of that top 10 are players that have played for one team. And I mentioned 7 guys total. There's a couple that are, really require an asterisk. Like Luka Doncic is on the list. He didn't leave on his terms. He didn't decide to leave. He was traded. Same with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was traded. So, I'll put an asterisk there and say 7 to 9 we see playing for one team. But that's really what stands out is, hey, the guys that have had the best in the top 10, how we're assessing this, they've been with one team. Most of them have. And then after that, you just see a whole lot of player movement.
Yeah, the one team, like I said, that's an interesting thing to think about. And I wonder if, like you mentioned, it adds to the calculus of like you weathered the storms of the various iterations of that same team that you were on. So you get a little extra credit for that. But ultimately, I think for a list like this is the time to do them. We're in end of August. It's time to have those conversations. Just kind of make you think about like a check-in, which I think like doing the network top 100 players is like a check-in of like, where are you right now? Where how you see things. It can change. It will change. That's one thing you can count on. It will change. And I guess a question for me looking at that is like, how much higher can Giannis possibly climb on a list like this? Like if he's already seen as being the 7th player of this century from 2001 onward, like how much higher can he climb another ring? What does that do for Giannis? Can he finish top 5 player, of this quarter century mark when he's all said and done?
Overdue for a break. I want to continue that conversation and then get to another check-in that you may not like quite as much. We'll do so after this. Time to talk to you about our friends over at Open Phone. If you're running a business, every missed phone call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need. Maybe you needed a plumber. If the first one you called didn't answer, you didn't wait. You moved on, and that's why you need Open Phone. It is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. It lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app, offers a shared inbox that'll prove to be a game changer for you and your team. You or the rest of your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. So you brought it up really quickly. I do just want to entertain that question of how much higher could Giannis go? And like, especially if he adds another championship, we're going to assume he finishes his career with the Bucks. That's the reality I choose to live in and don't want to entertain anything else. So I think given, which we'll get to, a lot of the uncertainty and a lack of optimism on the national front surrounding this Bucks team, that enhances it even more to say, whoa, he won a championship with this team, almost like the Dirk taking down the Heatles type of the championship there. But Yeah, number one is LeBron James. Giannis is not usurping him on this list. Giannis is not moving past Steph Curry, who's number two. Tim Duncan, as much as it pains me to say, Camille, as a child. Yeah, Charles Barkley's my all-time favorite player, but Tim Duncan's the greatest power forward of all time. He's not moving past him. So it really opens up the Shaq and Nikola Jokic. And, if Giannis finishes with more championships than Nikola Jokic, and just, as many of the individual honors or very close resumes outside of that, I don't see how you can't put Giannis higher than Jokic on this list. So that is an interesting and attainable one to me. Kobe Bryant in front of Giannis, I don't see that Giannis moving past him just because of the regard that, all players currently share for Kobe Bryant and the mythology that came with Kobe and the longevity too, for how long that career stretched. I don't think he'll move past him. Shaq is an interesting one too, because, we've oftentimes said Giannis was the modern day, or is the modern day Shaq, with his play in the paint and just how much of a brute force he is there. But there was nothing like Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, I'm old enough to remember every single year of Shaq's career. And I would certainly, once the end of the Lakers days came, there's no question Giannis is a much better two-way player than Shaq. The Shaq that we saw in Orlando was much different than the Shaq the rest of the years, but just how dominant and how much of a unicorn Shaq was, where you think about the highlights of seeing Shaq taking the ball down the floor, taking it off the rim and taking it the length of the floor. We hadn't seen things like that before. So I just think the force of nature he was. You can make a strong case Giannis has had a better career, especially if it's with one team, but I ultimately don't see him moving past Shaq in the public eye. So it's really like, maybe he could get to 5, maybe he could move up one spot.
I think for this particular list, the thing that helps Giannis over somebody like a Shaquille O'Neal is the fact that it's only looking at their career from 01 forward.
20, yeah.
So, I mean, it does include the Laker, like them starting to get those rings, so on and so forth.
Includes 2 of the 3, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it does take out also like the magic years of Shaq, where you were seeing that real unique blend of speed and size that he had. So that's one thing I think that helps the Giannis case of like, how can you move up this list? And it's like Shaq played from 92 to 2011. So if you're taking out some of those first years, like it does help you along the way to try to catch him. Kobe is an interesting one because, I mean, Kobe on this list was already ranked behind Shaq and behind Nikola Jokic. So like for Jokic, it's definitely putting a emphasis on like the individual hardware that he's been able to win, and just his standing of just like being a dominant player, even though he only has the one championship. So like, this isn't a list that's looking at rings alone, and like you got to have the rings to be on this list and be high on this list. Like, it's looking at complete career. So like, if Giannis continues playing at this level that he has been the last few years for another few years, where he's somebody who's in the MVP conversation consistently, he's someone who's nabbing, those NBA, all or first team, second teams along the way. He's getting some more defensive team nods, like continuing just to add on to it, getting new records along the way that he hasn't already touched. Like, I think that's what helps to push Giannis forward on this list. But Kobe's an interesting one, because like, how do you surpass what Kobe is? But they already got Jokic ahead of Kobe on this list, so it's not impossible.
It's, I might change my answer because of the context. I completely forgot, even though we started talking about that, overlooked, and you pointed out well, let's keep in mind, January 1st, 2001 to present day is what we're looking at. And in that stretch, has Shaquille O'Neal been a better player than Giannis has? I mean, he has 2 championships versus the 1, but that was post MVP years for Shaq. That was with 3 seasons in Los Angeles, and that's when it really started to change, where once that last year in LA, especially after that point forward, Shaq never averaged more than 22 points per game in an individual season, and he played 11 more years, or 11 seasons in this time frame we're looking at. So it's really just the extra championship that he has. And again, we can point to, well, that was the star era of the NBA where you needed to be a super team and have multiple superstars on your team. And Shaq had Kobe, who wasn't quite the level that we saw Kobe Bryant evolve into probably 3 to 4 years after that, but still everybody could see it's coming with this guy. So do we really knock Giannis that much for one fewer championship if that's how it ends in these last 25 years? The more I think about it in what Giannis has accumulated on both ends of the floor versus the version of defender that Shaq was from that point forward, and just physically, the player that Shaquille O'Neal was after that as well, I think, yeah, you know what? I changed my answer. I think he could get up to 5 ultimately and move past Nikola Jokic and Shaq. I still think Kobe is too tough for him to move past, and the other 3 that we said at the top are unassailable.
Yeah, and I think when you think of like just the bigs here, we're talking about, like, we mentioned Curry and LeBron for sure. Like, Duncan's not getting touched too, but even Duncan's career started in 97. So like he played deep into this current century of basketball too. And Tim Duncan was playing at a pretty high level throughout that time there. So for Giannis, like, there's a pathway where you look back at this and he is top 5, in a couple of more years of looking at, like, hey, since the century began, who are the best players of the 21st century? Like, I don't think that it's crazy if Giannis is considered top 5 within the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Duncan still had, and I'm not saying you're putting Giannis in front of him. Tim Duncan still had 2 MVPs in that stretch, and 4 of the 5 championships that he ultimately won. So
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, he started later. Like, it was not like Shaq where it's 92, so you're Xing out so much of it. But Tim Duncan was right there getting to that peak as the calendar turned into the 2000s.
Yeah, Giannis would really need to go on a tear to move past Tim Duncan on this list. All right, we said there was one other check-in you may not like as much. It's not unexpected. We'll rip the Band-Aid off of that coming up next. Well, we've got an important request for all of our listeners and viewers out there. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts better than ever. It's your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks again for helping us out. August 26th is here. It's officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Go ahead and take a flyer on Jordan Love in the MVP race. Crown your champion Packers in August, or parlay your division winner dark horses. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Days is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. So the other list, Camille, not a list so much as it was a survey, basically. And by the way, we're going to touch on it a little bit here, but we did a survey of our own to get a better view of our Locked On Bucks listeners, what you guys are looking for in terms of content. This one's separate. This is for the entire network, but it's a chance for you to win some money there as well, some Amazon gift cards. So to avoid any confusion, that's what you're hearing with the survey. But speaking of surveys, ESPN did one with some high-level questions about the upcoming season here. Now, it was only, I believe, 25 participants that they had, so a pretty small sample size. We've had more on our Locked On Bucks survey, but some of the questions that stood out and what I'm sure a lot of people have already seen in the last day on social media. We'll start with this one. Which team will take a tumble this season. The Bucks topped the list at number 1. Lakers were number 2. Celtics and Suns were tied for 3rd. The Philadelphia 76ers were 4th and the Pacers were 5th. I say that tone with Philadelphia because the question of which team will make a major leap, Philadelphia was number 2 on that list. So there's no in between. Everybody surveyed either thinks the 76ers are going to surprise people or they're going to be really bad. But I suppose, were you surprised the Bucks were the number 1 choice among national analysts for who was going to take the biggest step backward?
Not necessarily surprised, but that did not make me any less disappointed that is where the people went. Like, I understand the why. You look at the fact that they lost Damian Lillard, and it's like, oh my gosh, this roster, who else outside of Giannis can you depend on? So on and so forth. But the way that question is framed of like who's going to take the biggest tumble this season, like this is a Bucks team that, first of all, for the last few years hasn't even made it out the first round. Yeah. This is a Bucks team here that, last year they won 48 games. The year before that, they won 49, which is coming down from them winning 58 3 seasons prior to this. So like, how much more of a quote unquote tumble do you think that this Bucks team is really going to take with Giannis at the helm, even if you don't have the additional star power around him? That's the piece of, for me, it's where it's like, do y'all think the Bucks are going to be like a 32 win team or something this upcoming year? Like, what type of tumble is being projected for this team? Which is why, for myself, when I look at things like this, I don't see the Bucks really tumbling too much, because this was a team that was fighting, for a top 6 seed last year. And I can see that being the exact same case again this year, and in a package, one could say, that might actually surprise more people than what they were able to do last year.
So if they win, I don't project this to happen, just to be clear, but let's say the Bucks win 42 games. And they get out of the first round. Is that a tumble?
Not in my book. Like, regular season, you might take a little step back, but ultimately teams continue to be judged by what they do in the playoffs. Like, that's why there's the conversation that is around the Cavaliers right now. So for the Bucks, if that is the case and you win 42 games, but you make it out the first round, like you went further than you did the past couple of seasons.
I think I know your answer given how you just framed that last point, but what if they win 52 games, 53 games this year, but lose in the first round again? Is that a step backward?
I don't think I would say it's a step backward. It's another one where you're like, it's disappointing that you still can't seem to figure out a way out of that first round. But there was something that was happening in the regular season that didn't seem to translate at that point. So now it's trying to figure out what was lost in translation between being this dominant regular season team to a team that come playoff time, you're not built for it. Why? Figure that part out and go from there.
So for those 2 questions, who will surprise, who will take a tumble, they awarded points. So you give first place, second place, and third place votes. So you get 5 points for first place, 3 for a second place, and 1 for third place. So it's points driven. The Bucks received the most points for who will take a tumble at 41. It's a pretty wide gap between the Bucks and the Lakers. Lakers had 32. Everything else was pretty even. Celtics and Suns were 28. 76ers were 25. Pacers were 19. I mean, that's more understandable. I think people would assume Indiana's going to take a bit of a tumble there. So I was frankly surprised Indiana wasn't higher on the list, unless it's just like, look, we get it. They're down Tyrese Halliburton. They don't have Miles Turner anymore. So we're more thinking about which teams have bigger expectations, loftier expectations that'll disappoint. The other one that's sure not going to make Bucks fans happy is, and look, it's always difficult to say, hey, this isn't going to make you happy, so let's bring it up. But we're talking through the feelings here, Camille. The next superstar request a trade will be, now the good news is Giannis was not number 1 on that list. The bad news is he was on the list and he was number 2. Who would you guess was the player that received more votes than Giannis did in terms of outsiders think they're going to request a trade.
Now, had I've read it, so I know what the answer is.
You
But
should have
before,
lied, Camille, and
I
just said,
know
huh.
I can't. But I will say this: when I looked at the article and saw who was number one, it was not who I expected. I thought that
No.
they were going to say somebody like. At first, for a while, I was like, maybe it's going to be
LeBron.
Trae Young. I thought for a second Trae, but I was like, no, things are going too good in Atlanta. It's not going to be Trae. It's a name you heard a lot. And I
There's
was
some
like,
interesting reporting from Mark Stein and Jake Fisher over the weekend on that, though.
right. So then I was like, I was like, maybe Ja. And I was like, nah, Ja just recently doubled down on how he wants to be in Memphis. And I was like, maybe it's LeBron that tops the list going into this because of just how he came into this season when he accepted the player option. So I was thinking maybe LeBron tops the list if it's not Giannis. And it was not. I was actually shocked because I didn't think about Zion Williamson as somebody who could be like, you know what? I'm tired of this situation in New Orleans and I want out because of just how everything has gone in the relationship between Zion and the Pelicans.
Yeah, I don't have the typical list of contracts up in front of me that I'll have when we do these shows. So I'm not going to throw out a name, but I do think the next name to request a trade is not going to be a Giannis, LeBron, even Trae Young type player. I think we're moving into the era where it's DeJounte Murray types are the ones of requesting a trade. The LeBron one, knee jerk seemed like the most obvious, but then, I mean, you have to use the same logic we applied to some people applied to the Giannis situation too, of like, well, LeBron's never done things that way. And I mean, LeBron has bounced around from teams, but he hasn't requested a trade. And he's pulled strings to get the teams that he wants. So is he willing to ask for a trade is the unknown part there, which between that and my feeling of just where the league is headed now, that it's going to be tougher for stars to move. And I think they've started to learn that of, well, if I want to move, I'm going to have to take less money because of how tough it's going to be to fit into these new CBA constraints. I don't think it's going to be a star level player. I don't think it's going to be Giannis that is the next player to request, next star player to request a trade. And then the last one that they had that was interesting, well, the last two is to me, because you get into conjecture of like, hey, who's the team that's going to make a big move before the deadline? I still maintain I think we're sleeping on not including the Bucks in that list because of some of the assets that start to come into play. I think more of it opens up in the summer, but let's keep an eye on that. And we know John Horst is always active at the deadline, but injuries and the impact of injuries, which injury will have the biggest impact on the Eastern Conference? I mean, Jason Tatum received the most votes. I still think it's Tyrese Halliburton.
I do
because,
too.
well, it's similar, for the Celtics of maybe the injury to Jason Tatum, not maybe, it definitely did expedite okay, let's get away from the tax and let's start to take some of our medicine now and recoup some of that or regroup for down the road. The Indiana Pacers, if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get injured, Miles Turner's still on the team. The Indiana Pacers are entering the season as the prohibitive favorites in the Eastern Conference, and who knows where it goes from there. So to me, I get the Celtics had won a championship, but this is a team that was in the finals and was in 2 straight conference championships and still a young team, younger than the Celtics. That is far more impactful in my mind than the Jason Tatum injury.
Could not agree more for exactly the reason you said, like that Miles Turner butterfly effect aspect of it. Like, not only is Tyrese Halliburton injured, but the injury also had a role in negotiations with Miles Turner remaining in Indiana. And if he does not get hurt, he's probably still there. He's not now. And now a divisional rival at that, has this player looking to be paired with him for the next few years here. So like, it changes the future of that team. Like, the Tatum one does change things for Boston for sure, but he's expected to come back. And honestly, some of the salary cap shedding moves that the Celtics made were being talked about being made if Tatum was still healthy.
We just thought it was probably next year, not this year.
Exactly. So I would go the exact same way as you, looking at that of like, I actually think it's the Pacers.
Last one I don't want to spend too much time on. Just, do you think there will be an 8th straight year with a new champion? the majority said yes. It wasn't overwhelming, but I mean, I think we've gotten enough data. I don't know what you think. I'm going to say yes every single year until I see a team win back-to-back titles.
Same. I think now I'm moving into a mentality where before I kind of expected the repeats a little bit, and now I'm in the boat of like I'm expecting someone new every year at this point now, especially when you look at how competitive the West is. Like the Thunder are still favored for a reason, but man, there are some challengers in the West that can come for that throne really quickly, and I highly doubt the Pacers are the team representing the East again this year in the finals. So yeah, I think it's another newbie.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder will make it interesting given the youth that they have, but it's going to start to get expensive. We talked about it, not so much for the Thunder, but for, again, this is where we're at with the league. When we had Frank on saying, like, I mean, think about the Magic and some of these teams that made some moves. They've already started the clock without being that competing for a championship type of level, without being there. And you're starting to see more and more teams get there, which makes it even more interesting across the league here. There's one last piece of news to touch on. There's not much in terms of updates. And frankly, Camille, I don't know that it even means it's good news per se, but we saw late last week over the weekend that I forget the exact wording, but Malik Beasley is no longer the subject of investigation. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean everything has been swept under the rug and it's fine and nothing to see here. There could still be some other things ongoing that he's not the main target of investigation. But on the surface, it does seem like all the reports of it's over for Malik Beasley, he's never going to play in the league again, may have been rushes to judgment. And you suddenly could have a guy on the market who was, in terms of 3-pointers last year, if not the best, one of the best shooters in the league, and has been that throughout his career, suddenly available if teams have kicked the tires, done their homework, and are comfortable with it.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to consider because of the unconscious shot-taking ability of a player like Malik Beasley. Like last year, Malik Beasley took like 300 something, like he made like 100, like 300 some threes last year. Like it's hard to replace a player that can give you that type of volume at the clip that he does. And now he's somebody who I think teams are going to still maybe have a little hesitancy with, but when you have a skill set like that, and at this point in the year where it's probably going to be a vet man type of contract, probably a 1-year deal, he's a guy you take a flyer on. So I'll be really interested in seeing if and where he lands when he does make it back to the league.
I mean, let's just, I suppose, get it out of the way here. Would you take Malik Beasley for veteran minimum? You being the Bucks?
No, not this season. Yeah. Not when the whole topic of conversation happened during his here in Milwaukee. Like there's just a lot of things still going on in the background for the Bucks. I don't think so, but I know there's going to be another team that takes that shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's this season is the answer to me of like, no, we're good. You got AJ Green, you got Gary Trent Jr., you brought in even players like Gary Harris. Not saying he's as good of a player or as good of a shooter as Malik Beasley, but you brought in more depth. That's not where the need is. And I think, quite frankly, too, we've seen the way the roster was structured. You had to bring on more two-way players, although I think they've done a pretty decent job of eliminating some of the weak spots defensively that you could probably hold up with Malik on the floor. We saw the Pistons certainly able to do that. But if Malik Beasley was 3 inches taller, then it's worth the conversation. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, because by my count, there's only 2 teams that have cap room right now to sign him if you want to offer him anything above the veteran minimum, and that is the Brooklyn Nets and the Utah Jazz. Brooklyn, we still got to see what happens with Cam Thomas. He does not fit the plans for Utah unless, especially since we're past the deadline now where you could trade him. So it's a vet minimum if he plays anywhere in the league this season, or maybe we even see something like, what you see more and more of in the NFL, where Malik Beasley is suddenly a guy that is targeted around the trade deadline of, all right, let's see where things are at and the teams that need some shooting then.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And listen, the Nets need some guys that will put the ball up. Uh,
Well, they just drafted 5 of them.
Well, like 3 of them are point guards. So like you expect them to really be looking to set some other guys up. So like, listen, that's why I thought Cam Thomas, enjoy your year on your qualifying offer. Whenever you get to this point, getting those shots up, Michael Porter Jr., get those shots up. Bees could fit right into that same category as well.
Camille, could you imagine Michael Porter Jr., Beasley, and Cam Thomas sharing the floor together?
No, I could not. But man, the shots taken would be crazy.
Leave your thoughts on the list we started the show with. Giannis's current ranking, number 7 over the last 25 years. How high could he ultimately get to? Leave your thoughts in the comments for this show. Continue, if you have not yet. We've put it out there on social media. We've included it in the show description as well. We're still tracking your responses to the survey. We've started to take a look at some of those questions and the answers that we've gotten on them. A little surprised with pretty uniform thinking on a lot of them. So we'll dig into the results coming up here before the season gets started, but still time to submit your answers to those survey questions. And we hinted at it last week, but tomorrow on the show, it's going to be 2 Bucks post-game radio show hosts catching up with each other. Steve Sparky Pfeiffer is going to join the show and share his thoughts on the offseason and what he's seen from this Bucks fan base overall. I'll say this on the show tomorrow. 2 people have said to me in the past, like, not to be like tooting my own horn, just like, hey, you've been hosting shows longer than anybody, Bucks specific shows in the market. I'm always quick to point out there's some issues with the station going away, but Sparky was the one that started it and carried that torch. So he crawled so the rest of us could walk. So it's going to be good to catch up with him on tomorrow's show. That'll do it for today's show, though. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.